panel of the afternoon. If I'm not mistaken, I can say with confidence this is surely the most sibilant panel of the Security Forum: sanctions, scams, and schemes. So welcome. We have with us representatives of the private sector here with Aaron from PayPal. We have Brian from Treasury, Matt joining us from the Justice Department. We are going to get to money laundering, cybercrime, ransomware, cryptocurrency, how AI is changing the game or not. What gives you hope? What gives you nightmares? I want to start with a quick level set and lay on me your best 60-second swing at this, each of you. How does your work look different than had we been on this stage 5 years ago? Like, cast your mind back, 2018, what feels the same, what feels different? And I want to start there because I want to give people a taste of just how quickly things are moving. We'll start at the end. Aaron.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Such a fantastic event, and it's a great icebreaker question, so thank you. As I reflect back, 5 years, it's been a really interesting 5 years geopolitically, COVID, and it's changed a lot of things, certainly for us in the way we do business. And I would say the theme would be accelerating trends, right? So from a commercial perspective, accelerated the trend of offline transactions to online, so our business correspondingly grew from 200 million plus customers to now well over 400 million plus customers, 6 billion transactions to over 20 billion transactions a year. So that's a huge playing field for us.
20 billion.
20 billion transactions, average value $60, very interesting. So a very interesting playing field for us commercially, but also, and in my role, to protect those customers and those transactions. And the other accelerating trends we saw are on the bad actor side, right? They are getting more sophisticated and attacking more at scale than ever. And I think COVID and COVID relief is a great example of the last 5 years, right? COVID relief, as we've all read, scams are estimated between $200 and $300 billion, not from PayPal, just overall. But we certainly did our part to combat that. And we always have a dual role, right? We want to stop the bad actors. We also want to enable our good customers.
Yeah.
So if you think about unemployment fraud relief, we had to quickly pivot to deal with that scale and sophistication while simultaneously ensure that our good customers who needed those relief benefits could get them. And I think that's a really good paradigm of the last 5 years.
Okay. Brian, the view from Treasury. What looks the same, what looks different than a few years ago?
I think Aaron well described what we're seeing on our side. You see sort of the explosion in terms of the new payment rails and opportunities to move value across the globe has exploded exponentially over the last 5 years. So that
do you mean
obviously
things as basic as we all Venmo now instead
exactly
of writing a check?
mobile money,
Okay.
Mobile payment systems, obviously.
That was not a dig at you.
Crypto.
Just inserting others into the conversation.
We own Venmo, so that's great.
You're at the center, and then that obviously creates just opportunity for cyber-enabled crime. So we've seen an explosion as well of ransomware, extortion, particularly hitting the United States, but globally we've seen the proliferation of these darknet markets where drugs and your ID, your credential, and private information is sold again to facilitate ongoing illicit finance and criminal activity. So I think we recognize that this actor could be anywhere in the world. So the one thing that I've seen our government do and continue to do well is to really push for international solutions to these challenges, recognizing the United States can't do it alone.
Matt, the view from Justice.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Louise, and great to be here. I mean, if I could expand that question actually to 10 years ago, I sat on this stage and I was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Mm-hmm. We talked about the rise of ISIS, and we talked about attacks in the United States. I'm now at the Department of Justice. We still care about terrorism, international and increasingly domestic terrorism, but really now the focus, as much as anything, is on the intersection between national security and financial crime and corporate enforcement. And by, I think about export enforcement, keeping sensitive technologies in the United States from getting to our adversaries, or sanctions enforcement. Russia invades Ukraine, we go after oligarchs and pursue sanctions evasion, cybercrime that you've talked about. So our work has really shifted significantly, really just in light of the threats we face and what we're looking at in terms of nation-state adversaries. And I would say the other thing, which is I think a theme of this panel, is how much that work isn't just the federal government. Terrorism, largely the federal government. When we talk about financial crime and national security, it's partnerships with the private sector because they are on the front lines of this fight.
And often seeing things even before you do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I want to make this specific because it's so big and abstract and hard to get your head around. And you mentioned, Brian, Darknet Markets.
Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of a case study because there were big headlines some of us may have seen last year. A Justice Department investigation led to the shutdown of Hydra Market, which, per your press release that y'all put out, was the world's largest and longest running darknet market. Help me understand, what does that mean? What was it? What was happening on this platform?
I'm happy to, yeah, so in addition to partnering with Justice, we designated Hydra at the time. And you know, the things that you see on these darknet markets is, one, a lot of drug trafficking. So you worry a lot about drug trafficking organization selling fentanyl and other opioids, synthetic opioids on these markets, really fueling what we have seen in terms of the growth in fentanyl-related deaths here in the United States. So that's a critical national security concern. The other thing that you see is the selling of these credentials, so that you know, your social security number can be sold on these markets if they've been exfiltrated through a cybersecurity breach at a company, or your house, your home information, so that it can create a synthetic version of you, apply for your credit, et cetera, or otherwise try to profit off of your information.
Who's selling? Where are these people?
So sometimes they could be anywhere in the world, unfortunately, but a lot of these darknet markets are being relied upon by cyber criminals operating in Russia. So that's a common jurisdiction that we see, but truly these actors are acting everywhere in the world.
Okay. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think this also illustrates the partnership between the Justice Department, where I am, and the Treasury Department, where Brian is. Where Brian and his team has the sanctions authorities. We have the enforcement authorities behind those sanctions. So with Hydra, you know, we work closely together. We actually charged the individual who was responsible for running the Darknet website. And I think it really, to your point, Brian, it really does highlight how sort of the digital asset ecosystem can fuel a whole range of illicit activities, again, whether it's drug trafficking and fentanyl, or you know, from a national security perspective, ransomware, and the movement of funds that support authoritarian regimes. So there's a range of types of activity, but the thing to think about is Hydra and other darknet marketplaces like it are the fuel for this illicit activity, and we have to bring all of our tools to bear across the government to go after them.
And just trying to understand the international aspect of it, because I was fascinated. This was a DOJ takedown, but the servers and the cryptocurrency wallets seized, that was
Germany.
Germany.
Yeah.
Why? Why does that matter if you're dealing with a currency that's all online anyway? Talk about that partnership and why it matters what country you're in.
No, I mean, I think where the servers are matters a lot, because be able to actually take down the website. So from us, it's always a conversation is like, what is the disruptive effect? We have tools within the USG, but then does a foreign partner also have a tool that's going to lead to some disruptive effect? The thing that we don't want to do is take an action that's not actually going to disrupt the criminal activity that we're seeing. So in this case, working with the Germans was critical to actually getting the servers taken down, because they had the legal authorities to do that.
And you said you charged the main guy. Now that they know how to do this, are you already seeing copycats? How do you prevent that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think this is a challenge, to be honest, that we all face, which is these nefarious actors take advantage of the boundaryless, you know, nature of dark market, ransomware, you know, cybercrime generally, and we are living in a world, sort of a physical world, in terms of law enforcement, where, you know, we want to arrest the person who's responsible and put them in a courtroom in the United States, and, you know, hopefully put them in a prison in the United States. That's not always possible, so we look for other ways to carry out disruptions. And that sometimes can be as basic as just announcing and highlighting the kinds of things we're seeing through our indictments, through our charging documents, so that we can put them on notice, but also put, you know, other actors and achieve some degree of general deterrence, because we say, hey, we're watching you, and we're gonna go after you.
Yeah. All right, let's, please.
No, I was just gonna. I think that is definitely true. That you take one down, and oftentimes you see them proliferate in another jurisdiction.
It is called Hydra, so imagine
But
that.
Hydra actually was so big. I think we have not seen that there's been a darknet market of scale that size, anywhere near that size, develop in the time that we took it down.
Let's go to AI, a thread running through so many of the conversations this year. Speaking of, this was on the radar 5 years ago, but nothing like it is now. To make it specific, Aaron, I know at PayPal y'all have talked about how AI is enabling fraud as a business model. Explain.
Sure. Well, one, AI is a big topic, and it's been around for a while. You have machine learning, you have AI, and now you have generative AI, right? And that's like the next big step. That's why we're all talking about it, because it's a game changer, right? And it's a game changer for everyone. And one of the ways to think about it is because it enables the machine to now make the next decision, it lowers the barrier of entry for everyone on different topics. So whether you're starting a business to do Photoshop, to make pictures, well, now you don't need the training that you might have, right? But also on the bad guy side, right, which is another trend we've seen over the years, and you all do just an amazing job taking them down, but you see the bad guys not just creating and using their capabilities to defraud people, but rather they build the tools and they sell them, right? And so now with generative AI, they can do that at scale, right? And they can actually create API-driven products with product releases, and you can have fairly low-level people on the bad actor side participating in very sophisticated attacks.
Give us an example so we can.
So think about, I know another hot topic is ransomware. So ransomware, the bad actors go after people's emails and try to convince them. Well, with generative AI, those are going to look more real than ever, and you'll be able to operate that faster and with more frequency than ever. And by the way, you don't need to know how to do it. You can buy it from someone else on the dark web and then deploy it against the company. And so it's going to be much harder to detect the sort of real from the fake. And so it will no doubt, if not deterred by us and others, turn into much worse cases.
How is PayPal, how's the private sector generally thinking about using it in good ways? How's it helpful?
So AI has been part of our DNA for a long time, right? So one of the lifeblood for our company is we want to enable all of these transactions all over the world. We also want to make sure we're not taken advantage of and don't lose too much money. And so we've been investing on the cutting edge of these technologies, including these types of large language models for many years, actually. And so that continues to be on the bleeding edge for us, and we'll continue to invest there to make sure that we can protect our platform and our customers. Because if we don't, we know that the bad guys will continue to expand their capabilities. And so we always say in fraud, if you're not staying one step ahead, you're behind. There's no maintain.
To what extent are you able to police it? I mean, what's the view from law enforcement on this? I know you'll just set up a new thing with the Disruptive Technology Strike. What is that?
Yeah, so, I mean, when we think about artificial intelligence from the Department of Justice standpoint, from national security standpoint, we think about how we protect our development of these sensitive technologies. These are, as you said, Aaron, game-changing technologies that PayPal, other companies, the government are developing, and that really allow us to stay a step ahead of our adversaries, whether it's in the military context, intelligence, or just general technology. And so we have laws that protect these sensitive technologies, AI first among them, from being transferred illegally to our adversaries. And so we set up this year a new strike force called the Disruptive Technology Strike Force, focusing on AI and other technologies with the Commerce Department, which has authorities in these areas, to enforce export controls and make it so that together as a team, we are preventing these sorts of sensitive technologies from illegally being moved outside the United States, because these are the technologies that literally have the capacity to alter the balance of power between the United States and our adversaries.
How well is it working?
Well, right now it's working pretty well. I mean, we just started it, but I will say we announced about 5 cases a couple months ago. One of them was a case involving a software engineer who worked at Apple, who stole some of Apple's AI technology, proprietary technology, and went to work immediately for a company in China. and he's been charged now by an indictment for allegedly engaging in stealing Apple's proprietary technology. So we are working, again, very closely with the private sector who are at the forefront of developing these technologies to make sure we're in a position to protect them.
Yeah. You want to jump in on this one?
No, I mean, we're focused, one of our roles at Treasury is the work to protect critical infrastructure, obviously focused on financial institutions. So recognizing that technology is going to create opportunity, obviously, as Matt noted, both on the national security side, as well as opportunity for adversaries and bad actors out there. We're focused on a couple of things like resilience, not just in the context of AI, but coming quantum and other disruptive technologies, as Matt noted, and then working with private sector partners, frankly, to understand how bad actors are using these tools and what they're seeing.
Yeah. Staying with new technology and things we might not have been talking about on this stage 5-10 years ago, cryptocurrency. I have a bunch of big general questions, but I guess I've been struck by recent headlines of major players in that field going belly up. How does that impact your work from a purely just trying to stop financial crimes point of view, setting aside convenience, profitability, everything else? Is this a good development?
I don't know if it's good or bad. I think we come from a couple of perspectives. The basis is we want to support responsible innovation, and the way that we see that happening is for cryptocurrencies firms, virtual asset service providers, to really build in meaningful money laundering and terrorist financing compliance in the service, in the app, or on their blockchain. So that's critical from our perspective, number one. And then, number two, I think what we have seen, we've done some illicit finance risk assessments, both in the context of digital assets and specifically decentralized finance. And in both cases, what you see is there are a lot of these virtual asset service providers that are subject to AML, CFT compliance, and sanctions screening rules, and they are not following those. And that is, frankly, the biggest source of risk, because it is no surprise that bad actors know that if these companies aren't doing that screening or have an AML, CFT compliance, that they can run whatever form of illicit finance they want through that service. So getting compliance is sort of the first step for us, and then obviously avoiding the scenario where you have these companies jumping from jurisdiction to jurisdiction to try to avoid meaningful compliance. So working globally through the Financial Action Task Force, which sets AML, CFT compliance across the world, is a key part of the efforts that we're trying to attach.
So share a couple perspectives, also obviously for responsible innovation, and we believe in embracing new technology and understanding it and being the responsible player in it. And so for cryptocurrency, one, there's many facets to it, but at the end of the day, whether it's whatever the new technology is, there's always concern, but it's still moving money from point A to point B. And what do you know at point A, and what do you know at point B, and what do you know in between? And cryptocurrency is very interesting because of, as you just shared, sometimes at point A in the beginning, you don't know that much, right? But you know where it ends up. But here's the really interesting part. Cryptocurrency runs on the blockchain, which is technology that actually has an immutable ledger, meaning once something happens there, it's there forever. And that's very powerful evidence for law enforcement, for us who like to help law enforcement. So and there's a lot of tools out there that actually are enabling the government and private sector to crack really extensive global syndicates who are using cryptocurrency. So I think there was a way that the bad actors felt like this was really going to protect them in a way that they're seeing now that those funds are actually being grabbed, right? Sometimes they're being grabbed. And so I think some demystification is helpful, and I think there are responsible ways to participate in what will no doubt be part of commerce.
Yeah, just a brief comment on that, because I totally agree with you guys' comments. And we at the Justice Department work closely with companies, responsible companies with good compliance programs, and who are committed to corporate governance and working with the government. It is the case that crypto, by its nature, it's decentralized, pseudo-anonymous. There aren't intermediaries. That is why it's those features of crypto that help it become the fuel for ransomware. And from a national security perspective, the biggest concern, I think, for crypto for us is how North Korea uses crypto, basically by stealing it. And they steal it to support their weapons program. So you can see immediately why that's such a big concern for us. I think public reports are that they've stolen $3 billion with a B dollars worth of crypto since 2017. And we've taken steps, again, working with responsible corporate actors and our partners in the Treasury Department and elsewhere to basically seize and freeze some of this crypto so it can never be actually used. So that some of it just sits on the blockchain, not available to the DPRK, for example, to build missiles.
Are there specific challenges, though, in going after activity happening or linked to North Korea?
Well, I mean, anything linked to North Korea can be hard, right?
Exactly.
But it is a newer problem for us, and we're thinking about how we can be innovative in really being able to trace. To your exact point, Aaron, like we have some capacity to trace these funds so that we can take steps to prevent it from ultimately making its way into the supporting the weapons program in the DPRK.
Speaking of specific countries, one of you mentioned a lot of the bad guys you're trying to go after are in Russia or linked to Russia. Have you seen any impact from the war in Ukraine? Have you seen any impact from Russia decoupling from the global economy in many ways, getting kicked out of SWIFT, et cetera? Has that impacted activity, illicit financial activity you're seeing that's Russia linked?
It has. So at the beginning of the conflict, there was a lot of concern that Russia would try to use these other financial rails to evade our sanctions, and I don't think we've seen that sort of at scale yet. The capacity to move billions and billions of dollars and then cash that out meaningfully, we're still not seeing that, and obviously an economy the size of Russia not able to do that. What we have seen, though, is the development and interest in developing new payment relationships, financial relationships with countries in Russia's near abroad. And one of the things that me and my colleagues have been going around talking to partner countries and countries that are, again, sort of in Russia's near abroad, that they would use to transship the things that they need on the battlefield, about sort of the consequences of materially evading U.S. and partner and ally sanctions, and that our priority in this context is really making sure, one, that we are restricting the revenue that Russia has in order to continue to prosecute this war, but two, and equally and more critically, restricting Russia's ability to continue to get the material, the parts and stuff that they need on the battlefield to continue to prosecute this war.
When you talk about Russia's near abroad, you're talking the Baltics, the Caucasus? Where are we talking?
Yeah, Caucasus, UAE, Turkey,
Okay.
Jurisdictions like that.
This sounds really hard.
It is really hard.
It sounds really hard.
Yeah, that's why there's a lot of partner engagement. I think one of the benefits, as Matt noted, why do we designate these wallets? Why do we designate companies, people? It's because financial institutions around the globe that want to continue to have access to the U.S. financial system have to follow those designations. So that's a really wide net. So it creates a lot of opportunity to disrupt a lot of the illicit financial flows that we're seeing.
But just speaking amongst friends, has the last year and a half with the invasion of Ukraine and everything that's happened with Russia since made it harder? Are there people you can't reach anymore because of sanctions?
I wouldn't say it's made it harder. I mean, I think, look, I think we had some really important successes and coming together both as a federal government, but also with international partners to go after oligarchs and others who are supporting the Kremlin to make the point that we are going to go after their assets, and not only their assets, but those that facilitate them. So we started a task force, klepto capture task force, that seized over $500 million, arrested or indicted over 30 individuals. So I think this is making a difference. Look, there are always going to be people who are beyond our reach, but they can't travel, they can't live the lives they're used to living, they don't have their yachts anymore. So look, I think it hurts, and I think it hurts over time, as Brian said, Moscow's ability to continue the war.
I'm going to open it up to questions from all of you in 1 minute. Hold that thought. I see you. We'll come to you in 1 minute. I want to quickly, before we're all incredibly depressed, do one more quick, we'll go down the row this time, this way. What gives you hope? What's like a really good development that you're super excited to talk about?
Well, look, I mean, I talked about the intersection between national security and financial crimes. And one statistic that really jumps out at me is that in the last year or so, literally 2/3 of the corporate resolutions that we brought in the Justice Department have involved national security. 2/3, almost $2 billion in financial penalties over the past year involving corporate wrongdoers. So my hope is that we are making changes within the National Security Division. I can say today, we now, as of this week, have a new chief counsel for corporate enforcement. We wouldn't have seen that 5 years ago, who is going to have a team dedicated to bringing corporate enforcement in line in the way we've done in other contexts, like fraud and corruption. And now, in the context of sanctions and export enforcement and cyber, we're taking that same sort of national security approach to that problem. So I do think the partnerships that we're going to develop through that type of program with companies like PayPal and others, along with the increased focus within the Justice Department, is, I think, a reason to be hopeful that we're going to make a dent when it comes to overall corporate enforcement.
Okay.
Honestly, I think for me, and as you all can imagine, the bulk of our energy over the last 18 months has really largely been focused on all we can do to support Ukraine in this war. And the thing that gives me a lot of hope is just how resilient and united the coalition of partner and allies have been in developing together tools in order to go after the Russian elite and the oligarchs and the proxies to Putin to really constrain Russia's ability to continue to prosecute this war. And that resiliency has manifested in the ways that we've all seen, including the adding of new members to NATO. So that gives me a lot of hope going forward.
Yeah.
I would say cross collaboration across the private sector, public sector, and also the nonprofit sector is something that gives me continued hope. I've seen throughout my career that the results we get together is always better than we can do individually. And I see that cresting, right? Even, Brian, we had teams together in Texas last week talking about fentanyl, right? Like 300 people every day in the US are dying, right? And so through the collaboration, believe it or not, we get trained on how do you make fentanyl? What chemicals? What are the precursors? What amounts? And that enables us to then monitor and provide information back to actually disrupt these bad actors. And so the fact that that's working so well absolutely gives me hope.
And that's just tagging purchases.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's
tagging
giving
things that look
yes.
suspicious that you wouldn't have known to tag.
Yeah. What are they seeing that's suspicious? What indicators are we learning through our partnerships with DOJ, FBI, DHS, and then how can we better identify sort of the financial tracing that will support going after these actors?
Got it. Okay, we're going to try to get in 2 questions. Yes, ma'am, in the back. If you would tell us who you are and a quick question.
Hi, Joni Lieback, former Vice President, American Bosnia Cultural Foundation, longtime local. Part of Aspen Mountain seems to have sold to a possible Russian oligarch who possibly, seemingly, gave his assets to his mother, has Swiss citizenship. And I'm wondering if the DOJ or Treasury is aware of this problem and if we can get our land back.
So we'll talk, okay? You and I. No. Look, I mean, stepping back a bit, we are very concerned about the way that some of these assets can be hidden through very sophisticated means, and again, working with the Treasury Department and other partners, including the intelligence community. One of the stories behind the Crypto Capture Task Force is the work that we did from intelligence to understand how these oligarchs were moving and hiding their money. So your question does highlight some real challenges in this area.
Great. So a quick one up front, if we can, we'll get to these 2.
Can I just offer one
Yeah,
comment
please,
on that?
while the
Just
mic is
because
going, please.
it goes directly to what we're doing in Treasury, which is developing a beneficial ownership reporting requirement that will come into place early next year. And then to Matt's point, looking at real estate transaction and investment advisors, because these are very opaque ways of transferring value within our financial system.
My name is Claire Finkelstein. I'm a faculty member at University of Pennsylvania Law School, and I run a center called Center for Ethics and the Rule of Law, which is a national security and ethics center. One of the areas that I've worked extensively on that I thought might come up in this discussion is Foreign Agent Registration Act. One of the tools in DOJ's toolbox, maybe not the strongest tool, but I'm just wondering, especially a question for you, Matt. There have been some revisions. I served on the ABA committee that recommended certain revisions to FARA, and how do you regard FARA among the tools in your toolbox for addressing some of the issues you're talking about?
Well, I really appreciate the question, Claire, and I know the important work that you do at your center at the University of Pennsylvania. So FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, is really a transparency law that requires individuals who are acting as agents of other governments to register, so that we basically know in the United States if a foreign government is seeking basically covertly to influence our politics. And we've used this rather sparingly over the years, but the point you're making is a really important one, is that we're looking to really clarify and strengthen how it's used, give the team that enforces this law some additional civil authorities, some additional ways so they can gather more information. But the real goal is to address what we call foreign malign influence. So you think about China and Russia and Iran in particular, and their abilities to influence our politics or our policies. And so we need to have laws in place that help place a bright light and make sure that those efforts are transparent.
All right, under the wire, we have 60 seconds, and I'd seen this gentleman's hand right here. Hey there.
Hi, I'm Bruce McEver. I'm Chairman Emeritus of Berkshire Capital, Berkshire Global Advisors. These panels get, on the same subject, get better every year, so congratulations to you guys. However, I'm wondering why we talk about this every year, but we don't have, as a country, a cyber police. Why don't we do something about this?
Cyber what?
Police.
Leaks.
Police. Police. People that,
Why don't we have
prosecute
cyber
cyber crime.
So we, now, as of 2 years ago, we now have this director of cyber security. I don't know what his or former title is, operating out of the White House, which I think is an important coordinating feature. And then obviously DHS is doing a lot of important work in the cyberspace as well, but it is a whole of government effort.
And let me just add, I think we're much better off than we were a few years ago in terms of how the government's organized between the White House, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and DHS Treasury. I'll give you just a quick example. We worked, and it's relevant to this topic, we worked very hard to claw back some of the ransom that was paid in the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in 2021. We actually were able to use our intelligence authorities, Section 702 of FISA, to get that information back. And that's an example, I think, of, when you talk about cyber police, using all of our authorities, intelligence and law enforcement, to be better at protecting our companies in particular from cyber attacks.
That was a very skillful and quick plug for 702. Let that not go on. Thank you for the question, and I think you've teed us up for opening the conversation next year. We'll start with cyber police and see where we go. Thank you.